At first, it looked like discipline, early mornings, no distractions, complete control. But what started as mastery slowly became obsession. And by the time you realized it, the discipline had already taken over. You think discipline means waking up early, turning off your phone, going to the gym. That's not discipline, that's routine. Real discipline is darker. It's the moment you stop asking for permission from your emotions. It's when comfort starts to sound suspicious. You've tasted it before, briefly, when you were alone, tired, and still kept going. That flicker of control felt powerful, almost holy. Then you lost it. Because discipline is not built in daylight, it's forged in the quiet, where no one claps. What I'm about to show you isn't something they teach in motivational seminars. This is the psychological descent that separates the relentless from the rest. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why people who reach this level make others deeply uncomfortable. But I need to warn you, once you see this, you can't unsee it. And once you start walking this path, there's a point where you can't turn back. Before we go deeper, subscribe and drop a like. Comment below with one word. The thing you're still negotiating with. This algorithm needs to know you're serious, not just curious. Let's descend. There's a version of you that the world doesn't see. The one who watches others celebrate while you keep your head down. They call it obsession. You call it order. The scariest level of discipline begins when your motivation dies and you don't stop. When the body aches, the mind screams, and something colder takes the wheel. Not anger, not inspiration, just obedience to purpose. People romanticize self-control. They talk about focus, productivity, grind, but they never mention what it costs. Because the deeper you go, the quieter it gets. And silence is not always peaceful. Sometimes silence is isolation disguised as mastery. There's a psychological phenomenon that researchers at Stanford observed in extreme performers, Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes, chess grandmasters. They called it affective flattening under sustained discipline. It's when the emotional reward system stops firing during achievement. You hit the goal and there's no dopamine spike, just completion, just silence. Most people panic when this happens. They think something's broken, so they quit, chase new goals, find new highs, anything to feel again. But the ones who don't quit, they discover something terrifying. They don't need to feel anything to keep moving, and that changes everything. You'll start to notice things, how people chase pleasure like air, how noise fills every room, and how you've begun to drift away from all of it. You don't hate them, you just see through them. Their dopamine, their distractions, their need to feel alive through validation. You used to be like that. Now you study them the way a surgeon studies a wound, without emotion. This is where discipline becomes frightening, because it doesn't make you stronger, it makes you separate. There's research from the Max Planck Institute on what they call behavioral isolation in high-discipline individuals. They found that people who sustain extreme consistency for more than 90 days begin to naturally distance from social norms, not because they're antisocial, but because their nervous system has literally rewired around a different reward structure. They stop resonating with instant gratification. Small talk feels like sandpaper. Celebrations feel performative. What used to bring joy now brings nothing. And here's what nobody tells you, that separation isn't a side effect. It's the mechanism. Because the moment you stop needing external validation, you become ungovernable. You're no longer motivated by applause. You're no longer deterred by criticism. You operate in a vacuum where only execution matters. That's when people start looking at you differently, not with admiration, with unease. There's a stage where you can't go back. You stop needing to be understood. You stop needing applause. You even stop needing reward. That's when your old self panics. It whispers, "Why are we doing this? What if it's all for nothing?" But the disciplined version doesn't answer. He just keeps moving, because the goal is no longer pleasure. It's precision. You don't act because you feel like it. You act because it's time. You become predictable to yourself, reliable, ruthless, And in a world addicted to impulse, reliability looks terrifying. Soviet psychologists studying cosmonauts in the 1970s discovered something they called motivational extinction. During extended isolation missions, cosmonauts who maintained rigid protocols reported feeling nothing. Not stress, not boredom, not even anticipation. Their brains had adapted to operating without emotional fuel. The ones who broke down, they were still trying to feel motivated. The ones who completed the missions, they'd transcended motivation entirely. This is the dark truth they don't put in self-help books. Real discipline doesn't run on inspiration. It runs on protocol, and when you cross that threshold, you're no longer human in the way most people understand humanity. You're a system, a mechanism, a force that simply executes regardless of internal weather. You'll feel the pull to break it just once, to rest a little longer, scroll a little deeper, indulge a little sooner. You'll tell yourself you deserve it, but that's the test. Discipline doesn't care what you deserve, it only cares what you decide. Most people never reach this point because they confuse tiredness with surrender. They think rest is recovery when it's often regression. But you, if you've come this far, you've learned that the mind is a liar. It tells you to stop right before you transform. The scariest level of discipline isn't about working harder. It's about feeling nothing and still doing what must be done. Neuroscientists at MIT studying habit formation found that after approximately 66 days of identical behavior, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, stops activating during that behavior. It gets outsourced to the basal ganglia, your autopilot system. But here's what they didn't publish. In subjects who maintained protocols beyond 180 days, brain scans showed something unusual. The emotional centers, the amygdala, the limbic system, showed reduced activation even during typically emotional scenarios. Translation: sustained discipline doesn't just automate behavior. It numbs feeling. You become a machine that looks like a man. And that's not a metaphor. It's measurable neurological change. There's a moment when even victory loses its taste. You hit the target, and it's just quiet. No rush, no joy, just completion. Most can't handle that. They chase new highs, new goals, new distractions, anything to feel again. But if you can stand in that void and not run, you've crossed over. That's the dark truth. Discipline is not the path to happiness. It's the path to freedom from needing happiness. And freedom terrifies people, because once you no longer need anything, no one can control you. Buddhist monks have a practice called cessation meditation, deliberately inducing a state where all craving stops. Not suppressed, stopped. They describe it as terrifying the first time, because your survival instinct interprets the absence of desire as death. But veteran practitioners, they live there, in that space where nothing pulls them, nothing pushes them. Pure, frictionless execution. That's what the final stage of discipline feels like. Not empowerment, not strength, just the absence of resistance. You don't want things anymore. You simply do them. And the difference between those two states is the difference between being human and being something else. At this stage, you start to see time differently. You don't waste it, you harvest it. Every action is deliberate. Every silence, strategic. You no longer brag about discipline. You embody it. It's not a banner. It's a burden. You carry it quietly, like a secret weapon that no one else deserves to touch. The world thinks you're cold. They call you detached, obsessive, even cruel. But they don't understand that detachment isn't numbness. It's clarity. And clarity is what allows you to move when everyone else hesitates. There's a concept in intelligence work called operational detachment. Field operatives are trained to observe their own emotions without being controlled by them, to feel fear and move anyway, to feel attachment and cut it anyway. It's not sociopathy. Sociopaths don't feel. Operatives feel everything, they just don't obey it. That's what high-level discipline creates. You become a watcher of your own mind. Your emotions play out like a movie, and you sit in the audience taking notes. Angry? Interesting. Note it and move on. Tired? Acknowledged. Execute anyway. Celebrating? Observed. Now back to work. This is why people think you're cold, because you've learned to treat your feelings like weather, something that happens, not something that decides. Discipline, at its highest form, doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers in the morning when you wake before the sun. It whispers at night when your friends give up and you stay a little longer. It whispers every time your mind tries to bargain for comfort and you say, "Not today." It's not glamorous. It's not inspirational. It's surgical. The scariest level of discipline is when you stop needing motivation altogether. You move without emotion. You choose without feeling. You win without applause. And you realize the most dangerous part. You're not driven anymore. You're programmed by your own will. Ancient Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. They'd visualize everything going wrong, not to fear it, but to remove surprise from the equation. Because when nothing surprises you, nothing stops you. That's the final evolution of discipline. You've pre-lived every obstacle. You've pre-solved every excuse. Your future self has already made every decision. All that's left is execution. You're no longer reacting to life. You're running a program you wrote when you were still strong enough to be ruthless with yourself. People will ask how you did it, how you became so consistent, so calm, so in control. You'll want to tell them the truth, that control cost you comfort, that peace cost you connection, that discipline cost you everything soft inside you. But they wouldn't understand, because they still think discipline is about routines. They still think it's something you do. They don't know it's something you become. And here's what no one tells you about that transformation. You won't always like who you become. You'll miss the warmth, the noise, the spontaneity, but you'll also realize something most never do, that the same fire that burns weakness also forges peace. When you look in the mirror one day and see the calm in your own eyes, you'll understand why they call it the scariest level of discipline. Because it's not about what you can do, it's about what you can live without. Discipline, at its peak, isn't beautiful, it's brutal. It strips you of excuses, feelings, and even identity until only intention remains. The monks were right. The operatives were right. The cosmonauts were right. True discipline doesn't make you superhuman. It makes you post-human. You're still breathing, still moving, still executing. But the thing that used to beg for pleasure, cry for rest, and scream for validation, that thing is dead. And what's left is something the world doesn't have a word for. Something that looks like you but operates like a law of physics. Inevitable, unstoppable, indifferent. This is not motivation. This is evolution. If you've watched this far, you're either fascinated or disturbed. Either way, you felt something shift. Subscribe if you want to go deeper. Comment "evolved" if you're ready to kill the negotiator inside you. The scariest level of discipline isn't waiting for you to find it. It's waiting for you to be ready for what it costs. See you in the void.